In any country of the world, the customs function has an ongoing love-hate relationship with the trading and travelling populace of the country. Hate because everyone hates to part with the customs duty on things so lovingly bought abroad. And love because the customs department protects domestic industry by slapping the duty we hate to pay. Without the customs, industry in one's own country would have crumbled against the might of the established Goliaths of multinational corporations. Gujarat, with her more than 1600 kilometers of coastline, that is 1/5 of India's total coastline, it possesses a glorious tradition of maritime activity dating back to more than 5,000 years. The Customs Department casts a nostalgic and proud retro glance at a historic period of its existence. The rich history of Gujarat includes a maritime chapter which predates the advent of the Western civilization. The oldest ports of India are found all along the coastline of Gujarat. The ports of Gujarat find mention in the ancient Greek and Roman books and in the ancient Indian epics of the Mahabharata, the Harivansha Puran and the Bhagavata Puran. Historical records reveal that during the medieval period, not less than 84 ports were in operation in Gujarat. The first tidal dock, not only in India, but most likely the entire world, is believed to have been built at Lhola in about 2500 BC. It was equivalent in capacity to the present-day Vizag port. Lhola was a port city which had some export-oriented industries. Articles like beads of semi-precious stones, ivory objects, shell inlays and ornaments were manufactured in warehouses of Lhola town, situated near dockyard itself, for the purpose of export mainly to the countries of Western Asia. The warehouse was easily accessible from docks by means of ramps. The customs duty on goods was collected in kind and the quality of exports was certified by affixing seals. The presence of a warehouse near the dockyard and sealing of the cargo links the past with the modern policy of having port-based special economic zones and the system of sealing existing even today. The dock at Lhola suffered extensive damages due to recurring floods, and its final destruction was caused by heavy floods in about 1900 BC, thus bringing to an end a period of hectic activity of seaborne trade at Lhola. The next stage after the destruction of Lhola was emergence of the ports of Dwarka and Bharuch, also known as Barigaza, during ancient times. The discovery of Indian-made articles in the ruins of Babylon proves the maritime links of Bharuch with places in the Gulf as early as during the middle of the 2nd millennium BC. According to the author of Periplus, 50 AD, 5 distinct trade routes were centered at Bharuch, which had monopolized all the export and import trade of the northern and central India at the beginning of the 1st millennium AD. This monopoly continued till 7th century AD. However, because of piracy by Arabs in the 8th and 9th century, the trade declined considerably in Bharuch. The port of Bharuch was the nerve center for export of medicinal drugs, cotton and silk cloth, indigo, pulses and aromatic spices. Simultaneously with Bharuch, other ports of Gujarat such as Mandvi in Kutch, Ghogha and Vallabhi in Saurashtra also flourished during the same period. The proverb, bride from Lanka and bridegroom from Ghogha, seems to have come in vogue because of extensive maritime trade of Ghogha with Ceylon. The Maitraka records of the first millennium AD from Vallabhi reveal that the import duty was collected in the name of Vata and tax on indigenous production, that is, excise duty, was collected in the name of Bhuta. As Bharuch declined, Kambe, also called Stambhatirth in ancient times, took its place. It was first mentioned as a port in 850 AD and was developed by the Gurjar Parihars as a rival port to Bharuch. It was the most important port for almost 750 years, from 950 AD to 1600 AD. Even Vasco da Gama, the architect of the sea route from Europe to India, was in fact guided in his quest by a Kutchi navigator, Kanji Malam. The great Mughal Emperor Akbar visited Kambe in 1572 AD, and it was at Kambe where he saw the sea for the first time. The import into Kambe from overseas consisted of precious metals, gold, silver and pearls. The chief items of exports were indigo, cotton and silk goods, sugar and medicinal drugs. The famous Portuguese traveller Pires observed that Kambe with her right arm reached towards Eden and with the other arm towards Malacca. However, control of the Arabian Sea by the Portuguese in the 16th century led to the beginning of the decline of Kambe. For the first time in maritime history, the Portuguese introduced a system of license known as cartas, which every ship was required to obtain. In fact, all ships coming to and going from Kambe and other Gujarat ports were obliged to compulsorily halt at Diu and pay extra customs duties there. This additional burden, together with gradual siltation caused by high tidal waves in the Gulf of Kambe, led to gradual decline of the port of Kambe. However, with the rise of the English and the Dutch in the western coast of India, Surat began to emerge as an international port in the late 16th century. In 1573, when the great Mughal Emperor Akbar conquered Gujarat, Surat became the main port of the Mughal Empire and steadily grew into a top-class emporium of world trade, a first-class port with the hinterland across the Mughal Sultanate. Surat was the only embarkation point for Hajj pilgrims from the region under the Mughals and was also known as Bandar Mubarak, that is, the Blessed Port. European merchants were quite astonished to observe Surti Banyas undertaking their business transactions not by words but by means of fingers. Almost all the business used to take place in complete silence under the cover of a piece of cloth. The Sarafs or the Shroffs, exclusively hailing from the Vaishnav caste, were also an interesting breed, what with their instant currency examinations and valuations. European travellers such as Pierto della Velle, Sir Thomas Roe, Mandelslow and Thevenot, who visited Surat in the 17th century, were fascinated with the Surti way of life, as it were. Little wonder then that the intrepid French traveller Monsieur Jean de Thevenot, a scholar, linguist, historian, botanist, chose to write a historic account of his visit to Surat. These observations of the original documents in the museums in Paris and Amsterdam are considered to be the most authentic chronicle in the annals of the Indian customs. Jean de Thévenot's first-hand account of the customs house procedure and the prevalent practices of inspection of baggage and goods at Surat during 1666 is something of an eye-opener. Customs procedures were laid down systematically and followed strictly, sometimes to the chagrin of passengers. The key officer who controlled both the port and the customs house was known as Shah Bandar. He was assisted by a number of lower-ranking officers ranging from inspectors to clerks, shroffs and peons. The arrival of a ship at the bay was followed by the master of the ship riding in a boat and announcing their arrival to the customs officials. This would be followed by an inspector to be posted at the ship to check any smuggling or hobnobbing with other vessels anchored at the harbour, of course at a certain fee from each passenger. The passengers and their goods used to be brought to the port in small boats with half a rupee surcharge per head. As the business hours were limited from 10 AM to noon, these boats had to spend the previous night in the stream right opposite the wharf under surveillance. The boats were brought on shore the next morning, and the porters used to carry the goods to the customs house with the passengers keeping a sharp eye on them. The port proper had its own set of rules. Several peons, armed with frighteningly large canes, ensured that passengers did not dare interact with each other when brought before the court of the customs house. Smuggling was a severe offence, punishable by caning and heavy fine. Almost emulating the Mughal Diwan-e-Aam, the Shah Bandar, that is chief customs officer, used to sit in a hall on a divan and his clerks below him. Each passenger's entry was duly entered in a register. In cases of grave importance and lingering doubts, thorough search used to be conducted by the customs officials. A strip search was practiced when needed. First, the passenger had to take off his turban, his girdle, shoes and stockings, and, if the officials so commanded, even the rest of his clothes. Even his bare body was searched all over, and the passenger had to withstand this 20-minute ordeal without a whimper. But in rare cases, when women accompanied men, the customs officials extended the same courtesy and discretion to them which they probably reserved for their European ladies back home. In case of any gold or silver found in this personal search, a duty of 2.5% was slapped, and only after coughing it up could he walk out of the gate. But this was only the first half of the entire procedure. Personal search would be followed by reclaiming of goods and baggage the next day. Every passenger had to wait